Hello and welcome to BSB Must Reads, where we tell you all the books you must be reading. I'm Sandy Lowe, Bold Strokes Senior Editor, and I have with me the lovely Suzie Clarke. How are you, Suzie?
I am good, thank you.
Awesome.
So good to be with you again.
Well, I'm excited to hear about Enigma because this is your first historical novel. So I can't wait to hear all about it. Why don't you tell the folks a little bit about yourself in case they haven't met you yet, and then tell us about Enigma, and I'd love for you to read.
Okay, great. I'm Suzie Clarke. I've been with Bold Strokes since about 2019. Enigma is my fourth book with Bold Strokes Books, and I had a 3-book series, the Shadow series, prior to that. This is my first historic novel. Prior to writing, I spent my career as a public health commissioner here in Ohio for one of the Northwest counties, and spent pretty much my career in the medical field, working with women and their families and trying to get health issues resolved for us as a county within Ohio. So I'm going to go ahead and start. Enigma has been so exciting to write. Like I said, this is my first historic novel, and the period is 1941, just a few weeks before Pearl Harbor, and it's set here in the United States. The reason it's here in the United States is because I feel like there's been so much written about Europe, but I wanted to explore what happened to the people here. What was it like right before Pearl Harbor? What were the people doing? What were they thinking? Were they prepared? Were they scared? Did they know it? And as I did my research, those questions were answered for me, and I hope that they're portrayed in the book. It was my goal in writing historic fiction and writing Enigma specifically to immerse the reader completely in 1941, like they would walk in and they would be there the whole time with main characters. My main characters, Polly Sylvester, who is the main character, is an undercover agent for the United States, and she is sent to Ohio to a small town in Barberton at one of the huge airplane factories right outside Akron, Ohio. And she's sent there because they suspect there's a spy. And her assignment is very simple. She's sent there to get the spy at any cost. She is boarding with someone named Kalina Mikloska, because in the area, there was housing shortages, and she's boarding in the local neighborhood. And although she's boarding there, and she's only been there a short time, she has strong emotions for Kalina and Kalina for her. The scene that I'm going to read today is their right after their first kiss. They have tried so hard not to get involved, and their emotions have taken over. They are spilling over like a soup pot that's boiling on a stove, and they just can't help it. And so they've kissed. And this is a scene right after when they kissed. Polly slowly shook her head. What had just happened? It was only a kiss. It wasn't possible to have this happen from a kiss. But she'd shifted off axis. Time and space and distance were distorted. She ran her fingers through her hair and then scrubbed her face, trying to sift through her emotions. You're scaring me, Polly. What's wrong? Kalina asked. I have to get some air. Polly immediately left. She went downstairs and out onto the porch, inhaling deeply, steadying, trying to get her breath. This could not be happening. Not now, not when she needed to be totally focused on her assignment. People's lives were in jeopardy. She couldn't mess this up. She stared out into the darkness. A biting chill swept through her. Lights from the houses across the lake flickered in the distance. Suddenly the night was dark, lonely, cold. The front door opened. Kalina stepped out and slipped a heavy coat over Polly's shoulders. It's freezing out here. You're going to catch your death. Polly turned toward her. Kalina, we can't do this. Not now. I'm so sorry, Polly. I never meant to offend you in any way. How can I make this right? I don't want you to leave. Polly brushed Kalina's lips with her fingertips. Don't apologize. I wanted it. I needed it. Kalina clasped Polly's hand, surrounding it in warmth. Then what is it? How could she reveal who she was? And how could she get involved with Kalina when she could be the very spy she was looking for? The anxious dread surged within her. She had to stop this. It'd gone too far already. She'd let herself get in too deep. I can't do this. She'd have to lie her way out. She had to do it. It was necessary. Or was it? I'm already in a committed relationship, and we can lose our jobs or be arrested. There, she'd said it. Another deception. One more half-truth. The taste of it was metallic and bitter. She walked away and into the house. What if Kalina wasn't the spy? What would happen then? More lies? More deception? She slipped the coat off and hung it on the rack. Her stomach was in knots as she trudged up the stairs. She'd focus all her efforts on clearing Kalina of any suspicion or facing that she was a spy and do what she had to do. And she had to do it quickly. She closed her door, turned out the bedroom light, and sat in the dark, waiting to hear Kalina pass by her room as the words burned in her mind. Find the spy at any cost. Polly rose early Thanksgiving morning and helped in the kitchen, trying to avoid Kalina's gaze. When she was sure Aunt Berna and Kalina were busy for an extended time, she excused herself and went upstairs, going into Kalina's room. She quietly went through her dresser and nightstand, then checked under the bed and mattress. She found a small bundle of letters in one of her drawers and sifted through them. Some looked like they were written in what might be Polish, but others were clearly in German. Postmarked were from Cleveland, in Germany, as recently as last year. Her pulse began to race. More suspicion. Why would Kalina have anything to do with Germany? She looked through her closet. On the top shelf in the back, hidden among boxes and sweaters, was a very expensive Kodak extra camera with 3 lenses and an envelope. She took the discoveries and went to her room, locked the door, and sat on the bed. She laid the camera and lenses on the mattress, opened the envelope, and pulled out the contents. She hesitated for only a moment, then took a deep breath, went over to the window, and held the negatives up against the window pane. Son of a bitch. There, against the glass, she could clearly see the airstrip, buildings, various parts of the assembly line, and most importantly, what looked like 3 images of the structure of the modified P-51 Anaconda. Her stomach churned. She returned the negatives to the envelope and slipped it into a sock, hiding it in the top dresser drawer under her clothes, then placed the camera and lenses in her suitcase. She could hear everyone as they began to gather downstairs. Son of a bitch, she mumbled again as she went downstairs. She wiped her lips, thinking of their kiss. It didn't seem so full of heat now. And Kalina's beauty wasn't as overwhelming as it had been the night before. She needed more information. She had to be positive, although the evidence was overwhelming. Did Kalina play her? Did she know she was from Washington? How could it be Kalina? How could Polly be so stupid and careless? The day dragged on. After everything everything was said and everyone ate, Gerald went to his room. Richard informed the group it was time to dance, and they all went into the den, rolled up the rug, moved the furniture as before, and started the player. Polly excused herself and helped Aunt Berna with the remaining dishes. The last thing she wanted to do was watch Kalina sway, her beautiful body a betrayal of Polly's trust. By the time the dishes were washed, dried, and put away, the dance party was in full bloom. Polly turned to leave the kitchen and found Kalina watching her. Won't you join us, Polly? Kalina asked. I need to write a letter home, she said, and went upstairs and paced her room. She'd probably found the spy. Their job was almost complete. Wasn't she proud? She stared out the window. watching the branches of the bare trees dip back and forth as the wind blew.
Ah, okay. What's gonna happen now? Oh goodness. I love those
Yeah,
stories where duty and honor come up against love. And I
I
think this is
know.
such a great example with an undercover agent and a spy. I'm excited. I can't wait for it to come out.
Great. I'm very excited to write it. It was a fun story to write.
Awesome. So you said in your intro that you wondered what life was like for people during World War II, right before Pearl Harbor. What is it about that era, that period of time, that appealed to you as a writer?
Well, of course, I'm the next generation after World War II. I was born in 1949, and so my parent, I grew up with my parents my father had served in the World War. All my uncles and my older cousins had served, and of course, mother was here with her family here while dad was away. And he didn't talk a lot about World War II. He was wounded 2 different times in Italy and Germany. And he didn't talk a lot about it, but I was always fascinated what it was, not so much the war. The war, it was sad. It was really sad, but what the people did, how did they cope? Um, when 9/11 happened we went through all those horrible things and our people were killed and so much tragedy. I wondered what it would be like. Was this what it was like during World War II? Is this what the people felt, that anxiety and tension and fear of the future? And I just, it was fascinating to me.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Um, so this book is a lot of different things. We've talked a lot about it being historical, but it's also romance. It's also got elements of kind of an intrigue and a thriller in there too. And you have this very particular setting. How did you mesh all that together? How did you focus on kind of all these disparate elements and create one cohesive story?
Well, I think that's the art of writing, isn't it? It's that skill of being able to blend and weave tightly, weave those two pieces together tightly. I've always written romantic intrigue. That's just something that it's a skill that I have, I guess. But as my skill in writing has developed over the years with the different books, being able to do that, you have to have, first of all, you have two elements. You have to have a strong story, and you have to have a strong romance. And this particular story, um, the blending of the two just seemed to fit so well with the time period. It was very clear. I started off writing a romance, and it was very clear. And I thought, oh, if I put them back in 1941 and added Pearl Harbor and added all the things that were going on around those people during that time period, to me, it was fascinating. And so to be able to weave that in, of course, research is a key. And there's certain elements, of course, we all know there's certain elements in a romance arc that has to happen. Special things have to happen during that arc, certain arcs and certain periods in the romance. And it just fell into place for me.
Yeah. I think too, the kind of interpersonal, intimate nature of a romance gives you the space to explore all those themes you were talking about in terms of
Mhm. Oh, it really did.
what was people's psychological experience
Mhm.
of the time. So I agree, they do partner very well.
And especially to add the fact that, you know, um, women who were attracted to women, there wasn't a lot of places to go. There wasn't social groups that you could go to. And so that element was added in too on top of it. So yeah, it was just really fun to write that story.
Mhm. So as you mentioned, you previously you've written intrigue thrillers,
Mhm.
and this is your first historical. What was it like writing a historical for the first time, and what kind of challenges did you encounter?
I think my biggest challenge was to write so that the reader constantly stayed in that time period. You know, you I know I've talked before about, did you ever see the movie Somewhere in Time? It's a movie of a man who lays on his bed and dresses in a specific period, and he wants to go back so bad that he wills himself back into that time. And at the end of the story, he reaches into his pocket, and instead of a coin that was from that time period, he pulls out a penny from his real time, and it takes him away. He's back where he was in reality. And I think that can happen. You know, reader gets into a story in a specific time period, and they're reading and they're reading and they're really immersed in it. And then something will happen. A word's used or something is done that the reader will say, that wasn't done back then. And it's a spoiler for them. So my challenge was to make sure that nothing, no pennies from the current 2022 got back into 1941. That was a challenge for me. And of course, the research, making sure that even though most of it was fictitious, making sure that it was based on reality and the time period and what would have happened in the time period, the language that was used, the things that they did and didn't do during that time period. Just for example, the cars, you had to be really careful. Did the front seat move forward or back? Was there 2 seats or 1? Was there 2 doors or 4 doors? You know, just little things. And of course, there was no such thing as an automatic. It was all what they call standard shifting. So you had to allow for that and be careful with that. So every little thing, you know.
For sure. Yeah. That never would have even occurred to me, which is why I don't write historicals. I'm sure mine would be terrible.
And of course, I listened to music was something that helped me get into the mood of it. I listened to a lot of Glenn Miller, a lot of the big bands, a lot of radio broadcasts. I'm so grateful for the archives that we have here that are easy access to us to be able to listen to radio broadcasts, Christmas shows, all kinds of things that are recorded that I could listen to really get me that sense of the people in that mood.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, like, what sorts of research did you do? Was it mostly like fact checking things like the car you were talking about, or did you have more like first person accounts of the time to get that experience?
Well, of course, I had several of my relatives are still living. They're older, but they're still living. So I had them to go back to. I had a lot of my father's memoirs. I had those. And I was very blessed to have several people living in the area where I am currently right now in Northwest Ohio that were teenagers when World War II happened. So I got to talk with them. That was just so much fun to be with them. And of course, like I said, there, you know, as far as research, it was a tremendous amount of research from foods, how foods were prepared, just a kitchen scene that I had, how coffee was made back then, what was used to make coffee, what kind of coffee was available. You know, it was starting to be shortages everywhere in the United States during that time period, and a lot of people, and nylon stockings versus silk stockings, because they were using those materials for war production. So it was everything. Every time I turned around, I was researching, because again, to get this story, the correct atmosphere and the words and the scenes that they were going through and the things that they were doing, to make sure it was accurate.
Yeah, sure. Awesome. Well, I can't wait to read it. Enigma by Suzie Clarke comes out in November 1st from the Bold Strokes Books web store, and November 15th everywhere books are sold. Please check it out. And thank you so much, Suzie.
Thank you for having me.